perhaps one of the most enigmatic civilizations of our world. Scientific discoveries, belief in the influence of the cosmos on life, the invention of the solar calendar, crazy architecture, strange sculptures, and wild paintings. Grandiose mathematicians, creators of their own writing, which to this day cannot be translated. Breakthroughs in medicine, sacrifice, and the creators of the ball game. This is the Mayan civilization. They're what we're going to talk about today. It's learning about the world. Let's go. The history of the Mayan civilization, as well as their origin, has a lot of inaccuracies and understatements. In fact, even the true name of this people is not known where it came from. There is a theory that we can thank the navigator Columbus for the name Maya. During his next voyage to the American continent, Columbus himself was extremely confident that he sailed to the shores of India and China. By the way, the great navigator came to a small island, located near present-day Honduras. There he came across Indian traders. The question, where are they from, was answered with from the province of Mayan. In fact, that was where their usual common name came from. Where they came from is not at all clear. There are a lot of theories from great historians and scientific researchers, but none of them has been confirmed. Let's look at the time of their existence and the territory where they lived. In most sources about the Mayans, there is a date of 2000 BC. Let's take that point as the real beginning of their civilization. They build huts, large settlements appear, and agriculture begins to develop. Mayan settlements occupied the territories of South America and nearby Central America. These are the Yucatan Peninsula, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and Mexican Chiapas and Tabasco. The center of all events of this civilization was the Yucatan. Actually, it was there that the main excavations took place, after which the incredible discoveries of this civilization were made. Everything is clear with the territory. Let us examine what the people were like. The height of these stately, enigmatic smarts averaged 1.5 meters. The women were a little less than 10 to 15 centimeters. Their skin color was swarthy, their eyes dark, their hair dark. Their concept of beauty was peculiar. At birth, infants were clamped their heads between two planks, so that over time, the skull bones became flat as a result of deformation. You probably have two questions in your head right now. The first one is, what for? Well, that's not entirely clear either. There is a variant that with such structure of the skull, the human brain is more productive and can carry out those functions which we and you cannot. Or for example, in this way they referred themselves to a certain social branch. And there is a more interesting theory. Some scientists argue that the Mayans were in close contact with aliens and thus tried to resemble them, because they considered them to be certain deities. What do you think? And your second question is probably, what does it look like? Let's not go so far back into civilization and turn to the tribes of the islands of Vanuatu. Yes, they do so until now and most likely will continue to do so. The peculiarities of Maya appearance include pierced ears, nostrils, lips, necklaces around the neck. On top of that, every self-respecting person of this civilization must have tattoos. If there are no tattoos, then it is already a bad tone. To the peculiar idea of beauty, they added the teeth filed in the form of a triangle, decorated with stones. Also, the Maya considered a sign of fierce beauty strabismus. Since childhood, the baby's hair was attached to a rope with a ball, so he focused on it, and at the age of strength was already squinting handsome. At the expense of Mayan beliefs too, everything is ambiguous. In the settlements, the promotion and a kind of backbone of this faith were priests. They were the secretaries of the rulers of the settlement. The priests told the people the truth about their gods. They had many gods. God of the sun, moon, fertility, water, earth, gods of peace and war. There was even a god of edible snails. But, unfortunately, no writing or mythology about them has survived. All that remains of them is insanely beautiful architecture and painted walls with objects depicting the divine creatures. So why is everything ambiguous with faith, you ask me? Because despite the specific attitude towards mystical beings, the numerous sacrifices offered to them as gifts, the inner prayers, the Mayans believed very strongly in astrology, in the stars, and in the power of the cosmos. Here, let's go into more detail. Their priests acted as oracles or seers. Oracles could see the future and describe a person's destiny. All of this was built out of wildly complex systems. It's really very difficult to comprehend. The Mayans built a calendar year for themselves based on the position of the stars, the sun, and the moon. The basis for their calendar was of course Venus and its movement in the sky, but they also looked at the other stars. The Maya had some kind of observatories to help them with this. Points for observing motion could be, for example, the entrances to temples. On the walls, steps, niches, paths, and even the wall paintings of hundreds of Mayan buildings, the movement of the sun, Venus, and the moon created a play of light and shadow. With these markers they kept track of time. And accordingly, at some point the dots became cyclical in the same places as they had been some time before. On this basis, the oracles compiled data on the position of light, recorded this and compared it with previous records. From this it was possible to create a calendar. By the way, for a very long time, scientists could not determine the beginning of the dating of the Mayan calendar. There are two main hypotheses that the world of science relied on. First, the Spinden hypothesis, which says that the beginning was on October 13, 3373 BC, and second, the Goodman-Martinez-Thompson hypothesis, which states that the beginning was on September 7, 3113 BC. Not only do we not know the exact date of its beginning, but we are also not aware of the date of its end. You remember the general boom about the fact that the Mayan calendar supposedly ends on 21.12.2012. Well, as you might have noticed, the world did not end. All cool, of course, but here's a but. At this point there is a theory that the scientists were wrong. Well, they just got it wrong. Mayan calendar expires not 21.12.2012, but 21.12.2020. There are actually a lot of theories. But the most basic one is that the Mayan and Gregorian calendars, of course, are not particularly different. Both are 365 days. But there may be a discrepancy in the thousandths. Mayan is 365.242203 days, Gregorian is 365.2425. Naturally, this is just a theory. In almost each of their large settlements, the tribes erected cumbersome and incomprehensible constructions in the form of pyramids. Some of them, according to legends, were built over 50 years, and some were erected in one night. Yes, there is such a story too. The pyramids served several functions. Firstly, they were a place where the priests lived. Basically, they lived there and considered this place sacred, thereby forbidding others to enter them. They were built so that their sides faced exactly 4 directions: north, south, west, east respectively. There were several pyramids. The Pyramid of Kukulkan had 364 steps. There were 91 steps per side. Nearby there is one more pyramid. At its base there is a well which reaches almost 20 meters in depth. It was believed that this well was used for sacrifices. It was called the Well of Death. One of the most popular Mayan pyramids is located in Guatemala. It is completely painted with hieroglyphs and mystical drawings. Scientists, by the way, are still trying to translate its images. Some say that it depicts life and the life of the civilization, others say that they describe the future. Their hieroglyphs are a mystery to this day. Each of them appears in the form of a rounded square. Inside this square is a complex drawing depicting an animal, a person, or a pattern. One character stood for a specific word and was usually paired with another. The Spaniards were the first to start parsing the Mayan script. It would seem, what does this have to do with Spain? Let me explain. In the 15th century, the conquistadors were the invaders. Power, money, territories. They had to have it all. The Spaniards had been looking at Mayan lands for a very long time and repeatedly tried to seize them. The raids were made at intervals of several years. One of the last such raids, the conquistadors were horrified by what they saw. Instead of green fields planted with corn, prosperous civilization, happy faces, stern warriors, painted pyramids. They saw famine, dry fields, and utter destruction. Most of the territory's inhabitants at that time had already left the Yucatan. There was nothing left for the Spanish to do but simply finish off those who remained, or take them as slaves, and take the land for themselves. In fact, there is a lot of speculation about this kind of disappearance. And it is not surprising. After all, how could such a powerful civilization, which was at its peak in terms of development, could just let go all that it had been profiting for decades? If you take the scientific arguments, then the Mayans were simply overtaken by drought. Natural disasters took away their ability to grow something, thereby depriving them of a source of sustenance. Others argued that the Spanish conquistadors did finish off all the inhabitants and took the rest with them for sale or slavery. Still others believed that the Maya themselves surrendered and decided that they had had enough and that the Spaniards were not such a bad choice. If you take mystical speculation, as I said earlier, that many believed that the Maya were in close communication with an alien race and seeing that the tribe could not escape with their weapons from the fire invaders and took them with them into space. Of course, everyone draws his own conclusions for himself. But the fact is that an actively progressing race is simply wiped off the face of the earth. At the end I will tell some interesting facts from the life of this civilization. To somehow entertain themselves, they came up with an unusual game with a ball, which was called Poktapak. Two teams played against each other. There was a ring hanging high on the wall, and they had to hit it with a ball. But the difficulty was that the ball had to be driven into the ring by kicking it with your side. Additional problems were created by the weight of the ball made of rubber. It was about 2 to 3 pounds. Sometimes the match lasted for the entire day. The game was fun, maybe a little injury-prone, but the victory was worth a life. After all, the losing team was sacrificed to the gods. Mayan medicine was extremely advanced. They could stitch up wounds, make dental implants, and pull them out successfully if they were sick. And everything was quite humane. So that the patient didn't die of shock or simply wasn't in pain, they invented a very effective painkiller, which was made on the basis of the peyote cactus. The Maya also invented their own sewer system and successfully ran it between their other settlements. In addition to sewers, the Maya had an extremely developed sauna and bathhouse. Steam baths were seen as a kind of rebirth and were more about religious considerations than cleanliness. Though we do not know much about this civilization, but thanks to scientists and their discoveries, a veil of mystery about their life is opening before us. Their existence. Today, the descendants of the Maya live among us. But they hardly remember or know the secrets of their ancestors. And if they do, they are unlikely to tell us. That's all for today.